The observation deck of the starship Stellar Covenant was quiet, too quiet. 12 different species stood together, but none of them spoke. They all stared at the planet below through the massive glass window. The planet was called Seven, and it was beautiful in a deadly way. Green jungles covered most of its surface. Rivers cut through the land like silver snakes. Mountains touched the clouds in the distance. Park stood at the back of the group. He was the only human on this mission. 32 years old, with short black hair and calm eyes that missed nothing. He had spent 10 years studying dangerous animals on Earth before joining the Galactic Union Science Division. Now he was here, millions of light years from home, about to land on a planet that had killed everyone who ever tried to colonize it. The reason for those deaths had a name. The lead scientist of the delegation moved closer to the window. They were tall and thin, with skin so pale you could almost see through it. They had 4 eyes that glowed softly in the dim light. Was old, even by standards, and he had studied them for decades. He knew exactly how dangerous this mission was. 3 colony attempts, said, his voice passing through a small translator device. 742 lives lost. No survivors, no bodies recovered. The leaves nothing behind. A soldier shifted nervously near the door. There were massive creatures with 6 limbs and thick armor-like skin. They were bred for war, designed to feel no fear, but even the looked uncomfortable today. Studied the planet below. He had read every report about the 800 kilograms of muscle and blade, heat-sensing eyes that could spot prey in complete darkness, intelligence that matched some of the smarter species in the galaxy, the perfect predator. The survey will take 5 standard cycles, announced the ship's captain, a small furry being from a species could never quite pronounce. We land, we collect our samples, we leave. No one goes into the deep jungle. No one travels alone. Understood? Everyone nodded. Noticed that several of the alien delegates were trembling. He did not blame them. Their species had evolved to run from predators, to hide, to survive through caution. The very idea of walking into a territory went against every instinct they had. Humans were different. Ancestors had walked into the territories of lions and wolves and bears. They had tracked them, studied them, and hunted them. Fear was useful, yes, but it was just a tool, something to be controlled, not obeyed. The shuttle bay opened 30 minutes later. 12 delegates filed into the landing craft, along with supplies and equipment. Bay, the expedition's communications officer, took the seat next to. She was 28, with sharp features and quick hands that moved constantly over her. "You look too calm," she said quietly in Korean. "It makes the others nervous." Smiled slightly. "Should I pretend to shake? It might help them feel less alone in their terror." The shuttle launched. 7 grew larger in the windows as they descended through the atmosphere. Clouds wrapped around them, thick and white, and then they broke through into open sky. The jungle stretched below them, endless and green and hiding 1,000 secrets. The engine coughed. Felt it before the alarm started. A stutter in the vibration beneath his feet, a wrongness in the sound. He grabbed her arm and pulled her tight against her seat just as the first explosion rocked the shuttle. Screams filled the cabin. The translator devices squealed with panic in a dozen languages. The shuttle spun wildly, throwing equipment and bodies against the walls. Through the chaos, kept his eyes on the window, watching the jungle rise up to meet them. Impact. Everything went dark. When opened his eyes, he was hanging upside down from his seat restraints. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. The shuttle had crashed into the jungle floor and now lay on its side, half buried in mud and broken trees. He released himself carefully and dropped to what had been the wall. Around him, others were groaning, stirring, checking themselves for injuries. Was already up, helping a wounded free from twisted metal. "Everyone alive," called out. Somehow they were. Bruises and cuts and one broken limb on a soldier, but no deaths. A miracle, considering the violence of the crash. Crawled out of the wreckage and looked around with all four of his eyes. His translucent skin had turned gray with fear. "The communication array," he said, "destroyed. We cannot call for help." Climbed out of the shuttle and stood in the jungle. The trees were massive here, with trunks wider than buildings and leaves that blocked out most of the sky. Strange sounds filled the air. Insects, birds, things that had no Earth equivalent. And somewhere out there, waiting, was the... Felt it before he saw it, a prickling on the back of his neck, the ancient instinct that told him he was being observed by something hungry. He scanned the tree line slowly. There, just for a moment, a shadow that moved wrong, eyes that caught the faint light and reflected it back like black mirrors. It was already here. "Everyone," said quietly, never taking his eyes off that spot in the trees. "We need to move, now." The aliens looked at him with confusion and fear, but something in his voice made them obey. One by one, they gathered what supplies they could carry and followed the human away from the wreckage. Behind them in the shadows they watched. It had never seen creatures like these before. Most prey ran immediately. Most prey screamed. But the one in front, the one leading the others, that one was different. That one was not afraid. That was curious. It began to follow. They walked for hours through the jungle. The ground was soft and wet, covered with strange plants that glowed faintly in the shadows. Led the group, moving carefully, checking every path before allowing the others to follow. Behind him, 11 alien beings struggled to keep up. They were scientists and diplomats, not survivors. This was not what they had prepared for. The soldier with the broken arm walked at the back of the group. His name was, and despite his injury, he refused to show weakness. The valued strength above all things. To complain about pain was to admit defeat. Stayed close to, her eyes constantly moving between her damaged and the jungle around them. "I might be able to fix the transmitter," she said quietly, "but I need time, and tools, and somewhere that isn't trying to kill us." Nodded. He had already been thinking about shelter. The jungle would be deadly at night, not just because of but because of everything else. The smaller predators, the poisonous plants, the cold that would come when the sun set. "There," he said, pointing to a structure half hidden by vines. "Old research outpost from one of the failed colonies." The aliens looked at the building with horror. This was where people had died. This was a tomb. Looked at it and saw walls, doors, protection. They entered carefully. The outpost had been abandoned for years. Dust covered everything. Old equipment lay scattered on the floor, broken and useless. But the walls were solid. The doors still worked. It would do. "Make camp here," ordered. "Take count of all supplies. Start working on that transmitter. Everyone else stay away from the windows." The scientist approached as the others settled in. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of stress in his species. "Human, I must ask, how do you remain so calm? The is out there. It is hunting us at this very moment." Check the locks on the main door before answering, because panic will not help us survive. The is a predator. I have studied predators my entire life. They have patterns, rules, weaknesses. We just need to find them. Made a sound that his translator turned into something like bitter laughter. That has no weaknesses. It is perfect. Evolution spent millions of years creating the ultimate hunter. Evolution spent millions of years creating humans too, replied, and we are still here. Night came quickly on 7. The twin moons rose over the jungle, casting strange double shadows through the trees. Inside the outpost, the group huddled together in the main room. They had found some emergency lights that still worked, but the glow they provided was weak and flickering. Worked on the transmitter by the light of her. Her fingers moved quickly, connecting wires, testing circuits. "I can get a signal out," she said finally, "but it will be weak. Rescue might come in 40 standard cycles, maybe 30 if we are lucky." 40 cycles. Almost 6 weeks by Earth measurement. 6 weeks in a jungle with the galaxy's deadliest predator. The aliens groaned. Some of them began to cry. They made soft whistling sounds of despair. Even the looked shaken. Walked to the window and looked out at the jungle. The darkness was complete now. No stars visible through the thick canopy of leaves, but he could feel the out there, watching, waiting. "It will test us tonight," he said. "It wants to see what we do, how we react. It is learning about us." "Learning?" one of the smaller aliens asked. "It is an animal." "It is intelligent," corrected. "Maybe as smart as a wolf pack on Earth. It does not just hunt with its body, it hunts with its mind. It studies its prey, finds their weaknesses, exploits their fear." As if to prove his point, something scratched against the outer wall. Long, slow, deliberate, the sound of claws dragging across metal. Every alien in the room froze. The scratching stopped, then came footsteps, heavy, circling the building, one side, then another, then another. It was testing the walls, looking for weak points. Listened carefully, tracking the movement by sound alone. That was big, very big, but it was also patient. It was not attacking yet. It wanted them scared first. The lights flickered and died. Screams erupted in the darkness. The aliens panicked, crashing into each other, calling out in a dozen different languages. Heard the roar in challenge. Heard the high-pitched cries of terror. "Everyone stop," he shouted. "Be quiet now." His voice cut through the chaos. One by one the aliens fell silent. In the darkness they could hear their own breathing, their own heartbeats, and outside the soft sound of the circling closer. Moved by memory, finding his way to the window, he looked out into the night and saw two black eyes looking back at him, just for a moment. Then they vanished. "It killed the generator," he said calmly. "One strike, precise. It knew exactly where to hit." "Then we are dead," whispered. "No," replied. "We are being tested, and so is it." He turned away from the window and began to think. That was smart, but so was he, and now in the darkness the real game had begun. The predator had made its first move. It was time for the prey to respond. Smiled in the dark. On Earth, humans had faced creatures like this before. Lions that stalked villages, wolves that hunted in packs, bears that feared nothing. And humans had won, every time, not because they were stronger, not because they were faster. Because they learned. And tonight, Park would begin to teach the something it had never experienced before. Fear. Dawn came slowly to 7. Gray light crept through the jungle canopy and into the outpost where 11 aliens and 2 humans had spent the longest night of their lives. No one had slept. Every sound from outside had made them jump. Every shadow had seemed alive. But they were still breathing. They had not attacked. Was the first one outside. He moved carefully around the outpost, studying the ground, the walls, the trees. The others watched from the doorway, too afraid to follow but too curious to look away. "What is he doing?" asked one of the smaller aliens, a being with blue skin and large ears that could hear sounds from miles away. Stood beside them, her arms crossed, reading. "Reading what? There is nothing there." "There is everything there," replied. "Tracks, marks, patterns. Humans used to hunt by following signs like these. We could track an animal across an entire continent just by looking at the ground." The aliens exchanged confused glances. Their species had never needed such skills. They had evolved technology, weapons, ships that could cross galaxies. The idea of hunting with only eyes and patience seemed primitive, ancient, impossible. Returned after an hour. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp with new knowledge. "Single," he announced. "Adult male, approximately 800 kilograms based on the depth of the prints. It circled us 17 times last night. Every time it came closer. Trembled, then it will attack tonight." "Maybe, maybe not," looked at the jungle around them. "Right now it is confused. We did not run. We did not scatter. We stayed together, stayed quiet, stayed inside. This is not how prey behaves, that does not understand us yet. And when it does understand us, met the alien's four eyes directly, then we make sure it understands something else, that we are not worth the trouble. He spent the rest of the morning gathering materials from the crashed shuttle and the outpost, metal sheets, wires, containers, chemical compounds from the emergency supplies. The aliens watched him work, unable to comprehend what he was building. Helped when she could, but most of her attention remained on the transmitter. The signal was working now, weak but steady. Help was coming. They just needed to survive long enough to receive it. By midday, had created something strange. Reflective surfaces made from polished metal, positioned throughout the jungle on long poles. Noisemakers built from empty food containers and wire. False trails made with chemicals from the medical kit. Approached him cautiously. The scientist had spent his entire life studying predators from the safety of a laboratory. He had never seen anyone prepare to face one like this. "Human," he said, "I do not understand the purpose of these things. They will not hurt they will not stop it." Adjusted the angle of a mirror, catching the sunlight perfectly. They are not meant to hurt it or stop it. They are meant to confuse it. Confuse? How can confusion defeat a predator? Paused his work and looked at the alien. "On my planet we have a saying, if you cannot outrun the predator you must outthink it." He tapped the side of his head. "That has spent millions of years becoming the perfect hunter, faster than anything, stronger than anything, smarter than almost anything, but it has never faced something like us. Something like humans. Something that fights back with its mind instead of its body." Returned to his work. "Every predator has expectations, rules it follows without thinking. It expects prey to run in straight lines, to hide in obvious places, to freeze when cornered. We will do none of those things." The afternoon passed slowly. The aliens helped where they could, carrying materials, following instructions. They did not understand his plan, but they had no plan of their own. Hope was scarce, and the humans seemed to have some. That was enough. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, gathered everyone inside the outpost. "Tonight it attacks," he said simply. "I saw the signs. It has marked its territory around us, cut off our escape routes. It thinks it has trapped us." The aliens looked at each other with terror. Some began to shake. Others made sounds of prayer in languages the translators could not fully capture. "But we are not trapped," continued. "We have prepared. When it comes, it will expect frightened prey. Instead, it will find something it has never encountered before." The massive soldier stepped forward. His broken arm was bound tightly against his chest, but his good arm still held a weapon. "What will it find, human?" Looked at each alien in turn. 12 species, 12 different evolutionary paths, 12 reasons to be afraid. But fear was just a tool, and tools could be used. "It will find resistance," said. "It will find confusion. It will find fire and noise and light where there should be darkness and silence. And somewhere in that chaos, it will find doubt." Doubt asked. Nodded slowly. "Every predator, no matter how perfect, has one weakness: uncertainty. The moment a predator hesitates, it has already lost. Tonight we make the hesitate." Outside, the last light faded from the sky. The jungle grew dark, and somewhere in that darkness, the began to move. It did not know what waited for it. It only knew that it was hungry. But hunger was about to meet something stronger. Human determination. The twin moons of 7 rose slowly above the jungle. Their pale light filtered through the leaves, creating patterns of silver and shadow on the ground below. Inside the outpost, 12 beings waited in complete silence. They had turned off every light, every device, everything that made sound. In the darkness, they could only hear their own breathing. And footsteps, heavy, slow, getting closer. Stood near the window, watching. Beside him held a makeshift torch, ready to light it at his signal. The other aliens were positioned throughout the building, each one assigned a specific task. Even the wounded soldier had a job to do. The footsteps stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. The jungle was completely silent. Even the insects had stopped their endless buzzing. Every creature on 7 knew what it meant when the hunted. They knew to hide, to be still, to prey. Then the predator struck. It came through the wall. Not the door, not the window. The wall itself exploded inward as 800 kilograms of muscle and blade tore through metal like it was paper. It was enormous, larger than had expected. Its body was covered in scales darker than the night itself. Its eyes burned with a cold, hungry intelligence. Its limbs ended in claws that could cut through starship armor. The aliens screamed and scattered. This was instinct. This was millions of years of evolution telling them to run, to flee, to survive. They could not help it. But did not run. Now, he shouted. Lit her torch and touched it to a line of fuel on the floor. Fire erupted instantly, spreading along a path that had carefully prepared. The flames created a wall between thee and the fleeing aliens, blocking its advance. The creature shrieked. It was a terrible sound, high and sharp, filled with rage and surprise. It had never encountered fire like this before. The colonists it had killed had never fought back. They had only run. But there was more. Outside, the noisemakers activated. Containers filled with stones began to shake and rattle, pulled by wires that the aliens controlled from inside the building. The sound came from everywhere at once. Left, right, behind, above. The spun in circles, trying to identify the source of each noise, its hunting instincts overwhelmed by too many targets. Then the mirrors caught the moonlight. Had positioned them perfectly. As the twin moons reached a specific angle in the sky, the polished metal surfaces reflected their light directly into the outpost. Beams of silver struck the heat-sensing eyes, blinding it momentarily. The creature stumbled backward, crashing through the hole it had made in the wall. For the first time in its existence, the perfect predator was confused, lost, uncertain. But knew this advantage would not last long. It was intelligent, it would adapt, it would learn, and when it did, it would be even more dangerous than before. He grabbed a second torch and ran outside. Shouted after him, "What are you doing?" He did not answer. There was no time to explain. The plan had always been to do more than confuse the plan was to defeat it completely, to break its confidence so thoroughly that it would never return. And there was only one way to do that. He had to face it alone. The had recovered from the light attack. It stood in the jungle clearing, its massive body heaving with breath, its black eyes fixed on the small human who had dared to leave the safety of the building. Planted the torch in the ground. The firelight cast dancing shadows across the clearing. Behind him, he heard the aliens calling his name, begging him to come back, but he ignored them. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small container, chemical accelerant from the shuttle's emergency kit. He opened it and began to walk in a wide circle around himself, pouring the liquid onto the ground. The watched. It did not attack, it was curious now. What was this creature doing? What strange behavior was this? Completed the circle and returned to the center. He picked up the torch and held it low, near the trail of fuel. "You have hunted many things," he said to the predator. His voice was calm, steady, almost conversational. "Scientists, colonists, soldiers, they all ran from you. They all died afraid." They took a step forward. Its claws dug into the soft ground. "But I am not like them," continued. "I am human, and my ancestors hunted creatures like you for sport." He touched the torch to the fuel. Fire exploded in a perfect ring around him, rising high into the night sky. The heat was intense, the light was blinding, and the found itself facing something it had never seen before. A prey animal that had trapped itself. No, not trapped, protected. The fire was not meant to kill it was meant to create a barrier, a border, a line that said, this far and no further. And in the center of that ring of fire stood a human who showed no fear at all. The roared. It charged toward the flames, determined to break through to claim its kill. But the fire was too hot, too high. The creature pulled back, circling the ring, searching for a gap, a weakness, anything. There was none. Stood perfectly still, watching the apex predator of 7 pace around him like a confused animal. The roles had reversed. The hunter had become the prisoner. And inside the outpost, 11 aliens watched in absolute silence. They had no words for what they were seeing, no framework to understand it. A human had challenged, and the human was winning. The ring of fire burned bright against the darkness of the jungle. Inside it, Park stood completely still. Outside it, the circled endlessly, searching for a way through the flames that refused to die. Minutes passed. The predator grew more frustrated with each failed attempt to reach its prey. It snarled. It roared. It threw itself against the fire and pulled back with burns on its black scales. But did not move, did not flinch, did not show any sign of fear. The aliens watched from the outpost, pressed his face against the window, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. The soldier had forgotten his broken arm, stood in the doorway, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. They were witnessing something impossible, something that would change how they understood the galaxy forever. The finally stopped circling. It stood directly in front of, separated only by the wall of flame between them. Its black eyes met his brown ones, predator and prey, face to face. But which was which? Took a step forward, toward the fire, toward the creature. Took a step back. The aliens gasped. They could not believe what they had just seen. The most feared predator in the known galaxy had retreated from a single human step. Took another step. The flames licked at his clothes, but he did not care. His eyes never left this. The creature retreated again. Its body language had changed. The confidence was gone. The hunger was gone. Something else had taken their place. Doubt. You have never lost, said, his voice carrying over the crackle of the flames. In all your years of hunting, nothing has ever defeated you. Nothing has ever made you question yourself. They made a low sound, not a roar, not a growl, something smaller, weaker. But I am not your prey, continued. I am something your instincts cannot understand, a creature that does not run, a creature that does not freeze, a creature that looks at death and says, not today. He raised his arm slowly, making his body appear larger. This was an ancient technique. His ancestors had used it against bears in the mountains of Korea thousands of years ago. They had stood their ground, made themselves big, and refused to show fear. The bears had learned to avoid humans after that. On my planet, said, we have a word for creatures like you. We call them endangered because we hunted them. We studied them. We understood them. And we removed them from the places where we wanted to live. Took another step back. Its legs were trembling now. The burning in its eyes had dimmed to something that looked almost like confusion. Lions, said, taking another step forward. Tigers, wolves, bears, crocodiles, sharks. Every apex predator on my world learned the same lesson eventually. Humans are not worth the risk. He was at the edge of the fire now. One more step and he would be outside the ring, unprotected, vulnerable. He took that step. Flinched. Stood in the open jungle, nothing between him and 800 kilograms of blade and muscle. The flames crackled behind him. The aliens screamed for him to come back, but he ignored them all. He walked toward slowly, steadily, one step at a time. The predator retreated with each advance. Its legs moved backward even as its eyes remained locked on the human. Every instinct in its body was screaming warnings. This was wrong. This was impossible. Prey did not advance. Prey did not approach. Prey did not look at predators like they were nothing to fear. But this human did all of those things. Stop when he was just 3 meters away from close enough to see every scar on its black scales, close enough to smell its breath, close enough to die in a single heartbeat if the creature chose to attack. It did not attack. Go, said softly. Find easier prey, because if you stay here, if you come back, I will teach you what my ancestors taught the predators of Earth. He paused, let the words sink in. That humans are the most dangerous animal in any jungle. For a long moment, nothing happened. The jungle was silent. The moons hung frozen in the sky. The entire planet seemed to hold its breath. Then the turned and ran. It vanished into the darkness of the jungle, moving faster than anything so large should be able to move. Its territorial markers were abandoned. Its hunting ground was surrendered. Its reign as the apex predator of this jungle was over. Stood alone in the clearing. Behind him, the ring of fire began to fade. Above him, the twin moons continued their slow journey across the sky. Around him, the jungle slowly came back to life as other creatures realized that was gone. He walked back to the outpost. The aliens parted before him like he was something holy, something terrifying, something they could not understand. Was the first to speak. His translator struggled to find the right words. Human, what did you do? Looked at him with tired eyes. The adrenaline was fading now. The weight of what he had done was settling onto his shoulders. I reminded it, he said simply, that there are worse things in the universe than The rescue ship arrived 32 cycles later. By then, the story had already spread across the outpost. 11 aliens had witnessed a human face down the most feared predator in the known galaxy. 11 aliens had watched that predator run away. When they returned to civilization, they told others. Those others told more. The story grew with each telling, but the core remained the same. A human had faced it alone, unarmed, and the human had won. Wrote about it in his scientific journals. He described humans not as the soft, short-lived curiosities the galaxy had always believed them to be, but as something far more complex, far more dangerous. Persistence hunters who had walked their prey to death across endless plains. Tool users who had turned rocks into weapons and weapons into extinction events. Pack animals who had conquered their entire planet not through strength or speed, but through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. And at the center of all of it, one simple truth that the galaxy was only beginning to understand. Humans did not evolve to flee from predators. Humans evolved to become the predators that other predators feared. Park returned to his research. Bay received a promotion and a medal for her work keeping the group alive. Neither of them considered what had happened on 7 to be remarkable. That perhaps was the most terrifying part of all. In the jungles of 7, the Never returned to its old hunting ground. It had found new territory far from the place where it had encountered the human. Sometimes, at night, it would remember those calm brown eyes looking at it without fear. And for the first time in its existence, the apex predator of 7 would shiver. The galaxy had many dangers, many predators, many creatures that ruled their worlds through strength and terror. But now those creatures would have to learn what they had learned, what the lions and wolves and bears of Earth had learned long ago. There was something more dangerous than all of them. Something that walked on 2 legs and refused to be afraid. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same.